Blessings once again, family. Shabbat shalom to you and your family too. So grateful to Yah and Yeshua for this opportunity to come to you tonight on this wonderful, beautiful Shabbat. To kick off Shabbat, we usually sometimes at Rehoboth will either start Shabbat off right at sunset, or we will wait until um, mid Shabbat, around 10 a.m. to noon. And so here we are tonight, though, kicking Shabbat off with another lesson for you tonight. We're going to pick up where we left off on last Shabbat. If you didn't get a chance to see part one, you need to rewind that and go back and check out part one. Part one was on the 18th, last Shabbat. We dealt with the attack on the melanated family. And tonight we're going to continue part one. So this is actually part two of part one. And so we're going to dive in. We're going to dive right in, guys. I hope you come ready. I hope you came ready with something to write with. And this is too small. This is going to be way too small for you to write on tonight. So, and you may be writing fast because I'm going to be going. So you may need a pencil instead of one of these pens, if you don't mind scratching out stuff. If you're like me, you make mistakes when you're writing, especially when someone's talking fast. So you're gonna need something like this. Okay, folder, binder that has everything you need in it. Okay, so you're gonna have to have a binder. Look at this. I got binders with, look at this, guys. You can have your sections in here. You can have your Bible study section. You can have your Shabbat section. You can have your study notes section. You can have your word study section. I mean, I'm just saying, when you're serious about putting in the time and the effort to study, and then, of course, you got to have your tools with you. Got to have your tools with you. This is a Brit Hadashah in Hebrew. Okay, you're going to need to have your tools with you, man. And then you're going to definitely need your scriptures, your Bible. And then somewhere around here, I have I think it's on my other bookshelf. But I have the same Brit Hadashah, but instead of in Hebrew, it's in Greek. And then, okay, you got the Brit Hadashah in Hebrew. Then you're going to have the Tanakh. You're going to have the Tanakh, thanks to our good brother David. The Chumash. You're definitely going to need that. Definitely going to need that with you. And so here we go. Here we go, family. And so I've already used these to study from. And so what you're going to be seeing tonight is the result of using those materials. But at the same time, if for those of you who may have questions about whether or not the scriptures are indeed inspired, you need to pick this book up by Bruce Metzger. It's called The Bible in Translation, Ancient and English Versions, right? And so we know that the Bible has been translated. And when I say the Bible, I should say, actually, what I should be saying is we know that the documents, the autographs have been translated more often than any other piece of literature in world history, you guys. I don't care what you're talking about, Shakespeare. I don't care if you're talking about Hamlet, Macbeth. Listen, the Bible, the scriptures, is the single most translated material in the world. Okay? That means that more people want to read the scriptures than they do anything else. The problem is everybody don't want to live by them. They don't want to do like Yeshua said. Every man shall live by every word that proceeded out of the mouth of God. All right. And so we see here that the scriptures have been translated in over 2,000 different languages, over 2,000 different languages. And even in different languages, you have several versions, numerous versions in various different languages. And so I just wanted to just throw this out there for you guys who are serious about finding out where your Bible has come from. All right. So without any further ado, we want to start in the book of Psalm. Let's go to Psalm 38. And I'm going to put that on the screen for you here tonight. Psalm 38. Blessings, Sister Benz, to you. So we're going to go to Psalm 38, you guys. And we're going to jump right in. We're going to jump right into this particular lesson. Again, this is part 2 of part 1. So I should just say a continuation of part 2. So Psalm 38, and we're going to be reading starting in verse number 3. And we're going to go through. Let me make sure if you can hear me clear, if you can see me clear, put a 1 in the chat. If you can hear me and see me clear, put a 1 in the chat for me. Okay, blessings, blessings. I just want to make sure because I just wanted to make sure that this transmission is live and in effect. All right. And here we go. Psalm 38, verse 3 through 8. The word of Yah reads, here we go. There is no soundness in my flesh because of thine anger, neither is there any rest in my bones because of my sin. Okay, so notice that the psalmist, David, he says that there is no soundness in my flesh because you are displeased with me. Now, let me just say this and be very clear. Sin is not the only thing that can displease Yah. All right. The word anger, not only does it mean to have displeasure, but it also means to have indignation, which means that it warrants, my behavior warrants punishment, discipline. All right. And so David is acknowledging and observing the fact that his spiritual decisions have an effect on his physical body. And we're going to look at and continue. If you looked at last week, if you checked out last week, we're going to find out what those physical conditions are. And I want to be very clear tonight and say this, that many of us, many people who are dealing with physical ailments, physical incapacities, sickness, disease, many of those sicknesses and diseases are a direct result of our spiritual decisions. Yes, our spiritual decisions, whether it's choosing to sin directly against Yah or doing things that will lead to sin against Yah. Also, for those who are believers, this carries a whole different kind of weight to this because some of the issues that many people have is because, number one, as a believer, you are supposed to be engaged, as Paul and many other writers explain, in running a race. And many of us have made decisions that are hindering the efficiency of us running the race. It's not sin, but the decisions are hindering our ability to run the race. All right. And so I want to be very clear about that we're gonna push sin to the side tonight, so to speak, because the scripture tells us, and as we're going to get into, Hebrews chapter 12 says this: lay aside every weight and sin. So there are two different things that the scriptures are calling for us to lay aside. And he's saying lay aside these sins and weights equally. He says that because they both can equally hinder you from running the race, not the way you think you should run it, not the way your mama or your daddy or your cousin or your pastor thinks you should run it, but you should lay both aside because of the way Yah wants you to run the race. And that's really the key here, because he continues on in the book of Hebrews chapter 12, looking unto Yeshua, who is the author and finisher of your faith. All right. And so we're going to continue in the book of Psalm here. I just wanted to show you that a spiritual decision has a direct impact on our physical bodies. All right. He says, there's no soundness in my flesh. Why? Why, David? He says, well, the reason is because of my anger, the anger of the Lord. Now, why is he displeased? Why does he have indignation? Yes, because of sin, and also because of things that are considered to be weights. Watch this. Neither is there any rest in my bones because of my sin. He directly addresses it. For mine iniquities are gone over mine head. He says, I'm up to here in my iniquities. And iniquities are simply doing things that have been forbidden, that are, in other words, they're trespasses. They are things that go against the Torah. All right. And then he says, as a heavy burden, they are too heavy for me. See, we don't realize they're too heavy because we put so much energy in the outer individual. We getting our hair did, we getting our hair cut, faded. We got on the nice clothes. We got on our gear is matching. The fit is tight. We doused ourselves with cologne and perfume. We got on the right kind of shoes that's matching the belt, that's matching the accessories. I mean, we bypass the fact that our inner person. Watch, he says this, because he says, "Mine iniquity are gone over my head as they are heavy burdens." Just like a heavy burden, there is a spiritual weight that is being carried, even though you're still smiling, even though you're cute, even though you still look good. But he says on the inside, it is a burden. You are suffering. As a matter of fact, he's saying literally, you are ugly on the inside, but you're beautiful on the outside. He says that is a problem. All right. Verse 5. My wounds stink and are corrupt because of foolishness. Okay. I am troubled. I am bowed down greatly. I am mourning all the day long. Look, he says that now his joints, family, come on and go with me here. He says, now that my joints are beginning to affect me, my spiritual decisions are having an impact on my very joints, the very tissues that make up the 13 different body systems in my body, not just my um, skeletal system, but also my circulatory system. The blood says there's something wrong with my blood. It's not flowing throughout my body the way it should. There's something wrong with the lymphatic system, because the lymphatic system carries the blood throughout the entire body, cleansing it from waste. And because that waste is not being eliminated, it's stacking up, y'all. And so now, as a result, my joints, my tissues are not effectively working, because now I'm bowed down, not in worship and not in prayer, but in pain. Come on and go with me, y'all. He says, I am troubled. I am bowed down greatly. I go mourning all the day long. Verse 7. For my loins are filled with loathsome disease, y'all. I want you to see this. This is loathsome disease. He says, my loins. I want y'all to see this. De kasala. kasali. Okay. So he says, my loins, um, um, oh my goodness. Look at this. Y'all see this? The loins. Look at this. Properly, the fatness, the loin as the seat of the leaf fat, or generally the viscera or visceral. Visceral fat is all over. Some people have too much visceral fat, but then you have people who have just enough visceral fat that makes it look good. Men, we love women with visceral fat in the right proportions, in the right places. Okay. Also, figuratively, look at this: silliness, or in a good sense, trust. This is interesting. Confidence, blank, folly, hope, or loin. This is interesting, guys, how he is defining this. And he says this, though. Now, let's get it back into context. He says that my loins are filled with loathsome disease. So what do you think he's talking about here? Is he talking about, because he says my loins are filled with loathsome. Now let's look at loathsome. Chala. Hale. Okay. To be burned. Now, first of all, we got to see if it's in the nifal. Now, see, this is a real Bible study right here. Now, when I look at this passage, I'm thinking it is in the nifal. When you look at this root, kala, nifal, it could be in the nifal. Let's see if I'm right. I know my Hebrew. Okay. And you see it is in the nifal. Now, the nifal is very interesting because it's the passive and sometimes expresses a reflexive action. So the passive, remember, passive is something that happens to you. So in other words, let me give you a basic understanding. If I was teaching English, I would say the active is Henry hits the ball. That's the active. The passive is the ball hits Henry. Okay? That's the passive. All right? It's the action that is happening to the subject. So he's saying that this is happening to me. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. He's saying something is happening to me passively, but then he says sometimes it expresses a reflexive action. So watch this. Let me show you the reflexive. So remember, the passive is something that's happening to me. So he's saying that my loins are being filled with loathsome disease. That is happening to me because, watch this, all of this behavior and decisions that I'm making, my behavior, well, first of all, the input through my eye gate and my ear gate. Okay, that's where it starts. Information that's coming in through my eye gate and my ear gate has an effect on what I think. Come on and go with me down this path. It has an effect on what I think. The kind of music you listen to, the kind of movies you watch, the kind of doctrine you listen to has an effect on what I think. My thinking has an effect on my actions. My actions can develop into habits. Follow me now. My habits can become a lifestyle. All right. And David is saying that many people who suffer physical ailments because of spiritual decisions, they have made a lifestyle of living unrighteously and making decisions that lead to sin. You read verses 3, 4, 5, and 6. He says in 3, there is no soundness in my flesh because of your anger. Neither is there rest in my bones because of my sin. Let's look at that decision. For mine iniquities, look at that decision, are gone over my head as a heavy burden. They are too heavy for me. My wounds stink and are corrupt because of my foolishness. I am troubled and bowed down greatly. My joints now are beginning to be affected. I go mourning all day long. Watch this. For my loins, the fat in my body is filled with loathsome. Passively, it's happening to me. Okay, now what is loathsome? You guys know what loathsome is. Okay, Allah. Look at this. He says the fat in my body is being burned because it's in the nifal. He says I'm burning. Now, what does that mean, guys? Oh, I'm so glad you. Somebody look up acidosis. I want you to look up. So he said, in other words, there's inflammation that should not be in my body, but it's there because of a lack of proper decision making that will please Yah instead of making him angry. In other words, what we're doing is we're making decisions that will please ourselves, which lead to sickness and disease and alienation from Yah, instead of making decisions that will please Yah, that will bring restoration, connection, and health. Oh, what did John say? He says, I wish you above all things that your soul would prosper. No, that your health would prosper, just as your soul would prosper. See, we got the soul part, we got the spiritual foundation, and we know we pray, we make reconciliation, we read the word, we study, we fellowship with people, but then we got to look at this health part. Acidosis, a buildup of acids in the bloodstream. Now watch this. Acid, it burns. You know that stuff on your car battery? The acid on your car battery? If you were to touch that, it would burn you. Okay? So there is a burning, as the psalmist says. The word loathsome means there is a burning. I am, watch this, I'm parched. Look at this, guys. I'm dried, I'm roasted. I'm roasting, I'm burning on the inside of my body because of lactic acids, which is a buildup of acid in my body, in my bones, in the fat cells. I'm scorched. And watch this. We know that heat causes shrinkage. Oh, yes, it does. God, I wish I can get deep into this tonight. I'm already deep. So he says here, let me just go back to the psalmist and what he's saying, because this is very powerful. And I want you guys to see this. The psalmist says in verse 7, for my loins, he says, the fat that's in my body, it's filled with burning disease, acidosis, and there is no soundness in my flesh. Now, what is soundness? I get I'm filled with disease, but what is this soundness? Matome. There's no wholeness or wholesomeness. In other words, there's no shalom. There's no peace in my body. Entirety. It's not just in my head. I don't just have headaches. It's not just in my legs, but it's the entirety of my body is filled with aches and pains. And now watch this. This is what you do. You go to the drug man. You go to the drugstore and you get a drug. Watch this. You get a drug to temporarily deal with the symptom and the branch of the tree. Come on and go with me here. Instead of dealing with the root causes, which is what? Making decisions to please Yah. See, many of us will rather burn with sickness and continue our lifestyle if we can go and get a magic pill and clear up the symptoms for a while, which gives me just enough strength to carry on my life without Yah. David says no. And I'm going to show you why. Sister Benz just put here, abdominal obesity, excess weight that develops over time around the center of the body, also called visceral fat. You see that? Do you not know that there is fat also in the brain? The brain needs fat. But watch this. What happens is the lymphatic system of the brain, what is it called? It's slipping my mind. But just like the lymphatic system of the body, it goes around and it collects waste materials from the cells in our bodies, and then we eliminate it. Well, the brain has the same system. It's not called the lymphatic system. I'm going to give that name to you also. But the brain has the same system that cleanses the brain of waste that comes from fatty cells. But what happens when that waste is not eliminated? From the brain. Look up what happens with a buildup of fat, too much fat in the brain. Someone look that up. I'm going to show you. This is powerful. There's no sound, as he says, in the entirety, or the entire. He's not just talking about from the neck down. He's talking about from the head to the toe. Okay? So we see here that David is really describing some very serious physical issues that come from spiritual decisions that are being made. Do you see that? All right. So we're going to continue here. We're going to continue to look at, there's no soundness, he says, in my flesh. Now, what is this disease? What is this disease? Loathsome disease. Okay. Look at how many times disease is mentioned here in the scripture. 15 different times. Okay. It's mentioned in Psalm 38:7. An evil disease, say they cleaveth fast unto him. And now that he lieth, he shall rise up no more. Look at that. Look at all of this. And see, Yeshua came preaching, watch this, and Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and then healing all manner of sickness and all manner of disease among the people. See, if you're a real healer, you're not just gonna heal someone spiritually. You're gonna heal them entirely, head to toe. Okay, socially, emotionally, spiritually, physically. Okay. So I really want to get back to dealing with okay, so you see this Hebrew. Chala. Okay. Sick, weak, grievous, disease, wounded, like a prey. Grieved, sore, in pain, and infirmity, entreated, laid prayer, sorry, make suit, supplication, travail. Okay. So this is very interesting information here that we really got to take into. Now, I'm giving all this background because I'm going somewhere. Okay. And I want you to see what it is that we're dealing with. Okay. So he says, there's no soundness in my flesh. And then verse 8, finally, I am feeble and sore broken. I have roared by reason of the disquietness in my heart. And so, guys, I want to talk tonight and continue dealing with the attack on the melanated family. And I want to show you why everything that the psalmist has described here is what we are dealing with in so-called African American or Black families. I say Hebrew families, but many of us are still not knowing our identity, and they will cleave to this identity that was given to us that's inaccurate, that is really disrespectful and causes more problems than not. African American. So that means we're two whole continents. That's your identity. That means that you are 54. They're labeling you. You are labeled and accept. You're accepting this label of 54 different countries that have over 3,000 different languages and dialects in each country, which comes to around 100 and somewhere between 162 to 182 different thousand languages and cultures. And that's your identity, African American? Come on, family. That don't even make sense. Doesn't make sense. Now, if you want to talk about, well, we're Egyptian, we're Kemetic, we're Egyptian. Listen, people from Nubia migrated throughout the continent into Europe, into everywhere, into Israel, all over. So how can we be Egyptian? How can you pinpoint Egypt when we know that, and I believe that the Levant, as a matter of fact, y'all gonna make me pull something out on y'all. See, here's the problem. We got many preachers who say they're preaching the gospel, but I'll give them that. But they're not helping you understand who you are as a person. Let me read from. Let me stop sharing the screen because I want you to see this. Okay. Civilization or barbarism. An authentic anthropology by Sheikh Anta Diop. All right. This is page 94. He says, even the blacks of Palestine, these biblical cousins of the Egyptians, the Canaanites of the Bible, descendants of the Natufians of a Mesolithic period, opposed a fierce resistance in their different cities, which were all conquered and annexed to the Egyptian Empire. But notice what it says. The blacks of Palestine. That means the blacks who lived in Canaan, the blacks who lived in the Levant. These are biblical cousins to the Egyptians, the Canaanites of the Bible. They're descendants of a different group of people called the Natufians. So it wasn't, now you got to understand who the Natufians are. Okay. Now I know I didn't get on here to go here, but I want you to see who the Natufians are. Okay. Because we gotta deal with this. We got to deal with this disinformation. Okay, that's one of the things that pastors need to do when we are teaching and preaching. It's to deal with misinformation because we're trying to help our people move from one degree of grace to another degree of grace in truth and not error. Natufians. You do a search on who these people are and where they came from. They predate Egyptians. And watch this, they went into Egypt, they went into the Levant or Israel or Palestine, as they said, as Sheikh Anta Diop says, that these so-called black Palestinians, the blacks of Palestine, these biblical cousins of the Egyptians, the Canaanites of the Bible, descendants of the Natufians, a Mesolithic period. So look up. So before there was even an Egypt to say that you were from, because Egypt, watch this, Egypt as a civilization doesn't even come into existence until, man, way after the Mesolithic. Did it say Mesolithic or Neolithic? I think it said Mesolithic. Yeah, the Mesolithic period. That's a whole different lesson. It's a whole different lesson. But I want to just say that, we got to be careful. Oh, wait, about, no, not this one. Y'all gonna make me pull this other. Okay, here it is. It's right here. See, these are, I want to, oh man, this is not the one either. Goodness. Oh. I gotta look it up. I gotta find it. I just rearranged my library, and it talks about the first farmers were Black, no doubt. I can't find the source, but I will have it. I promise you that. I thought I put it up here, but oh, sorry. Indeed. See, the first farmers were not Egyptian. This book is called Historical Atlas of Ancient Civilizations. Historical Atlas of Ancient Civilizations. Okay, check this out. On page 22, the first farming societies developed in the Fertile Crescent, not Egypt, family, a broad arc of territory extending from Israel in the southwest. Now, the southwest, that's very close to Egypt, but farming didn't develop there. You know why? Because of the Nile River, because of denial. All right. Now, farming is a key element in civilization. And he says this: from Israel in the southwest, throughout Lebanon, Syria, southern Turkey, and then southeast across the foothills of Iraq. Very interesting, and the mountains almost to the Persian Gulf. Now, when we talk about the first farmers, and I do have another book saying that the first farmers were the Natufians. I just can't find it right now. My point is this: when we talk about what David is saying here, the people that first came on the scene that showed the world how to farm, how to cultivate, how to eat foods that came from the earth. Oh, come on and go with me here. Those are our people, family. Okay. And so as we get into this lesson, you're going to see why that's important. All right. So let's get into this lesson once again. And I do want to read something to you, because we as melanated people, melanated Hebrew people, Hebrew Israelites, let me be clear. We as Israelites, melanated people, so-called Black people, we've had to endure a Holocaust. Okay. Now, again, we're talking about the attack on the melanated family. And the title of our lesson tonight, what we're dealing with specifically, is Fruitless and Divided. Instead of the scripture as it teaches us in the book of Genesis 1:27 through 28, to Adam and Eve, he said, be fruitful and multiply. But we're not being that, family. Why? Because we've had to deal with several holocausts in our history. We've had to endure it. Okay? Several, not just one, but several. Okay, and so the denotative definition, okay, the dictionary definition of a Holocaust. Denotative meaning of a Holocaust, guys. Listen to this. See if this fits us. The destruction or slaughter on a mass scale, especially caused by fire or nuclear war. Now, notice how this definition of the Holocaust is very specific. Destruction or slaughter on a mass scale, especially caused by fire or nuclear war. So now we have to pull in the Japanese who experienced destruction on a mass scale because of nuclear war. Remember, the only country to ever drop a nuclear bomb, a nuclear weapon on humanity was the United States. And Hamas is evil? When's the last time Hamas dropped a nuclear weapon? And not just on the Japanese military, but on women, children, and babies. Okay? So we have endured our own Holocaust. The Holocaust of slavery. Come on and go with me here. The Holocaust of the Middle Passage. Okay? On a mass scale. This was destruction on a mass scale, y'all. Can I go on? Okay. The Holocaust of Jim Crow segregation, lynching, systematic racism, the military industrial complex where they would send our young melanated young men and to put them on the front lines of their wars, and they wouldn't come home. They would be murdered on a mass scale, destroyed on a mass scale. The prison industrial complex. Now, these last three I'm going to deal specifically with our topic tonight, Fruitless and Divided. We've had a sterilization Holocaust, family. Can I read something to you? I want to read something to you. Yeah, we've had a sterilization. They've tried to sterilize us. Listen, and you can look this up if you want to. Beginning in 1907, some U.S. state legislature passed laws allowing for the compulsory sterilization. You know what compulsory means, right? You didn't have a choice. Of criminals, so-called criminals, mentally, those with disabilities, they called it mentally retarded people back then. And institutionalized mental illness, people that had mental illnesses, they would sterilize them. Why? Because of eugenics. They did not want people who were so-called inferior to be fruitful and multiply. Come on and go with me, y'all. At first, African Americans and whites suffered sterilization in roughly equal ratios. Okay? So these people didn't care about white people either, so-called white people, at first. But in 1945 is a big year. That's World War II. That's one of the Holocausts, the European Holocaust in Germany. That's the rise of Hitler, dominance of Hitler. That was when Palestine was annexed or colonized by the United States, Britain, in a deal with Turkey to take part of Palestine and give it to survivors of one of the Holocausts. Yeah. Just check out the Balfour Declaration. Read up on it. Study it. Check it out. So at first, the sterilization of so-called blacks and whites were equal until 1945. In the 1950s, the federal welfare program, aid to families with dependent children, y'all remember it, AFDC, was criticized by some whites who did not want to subsidize poor black families. States such as North Carolina and South Carolina performed sterilization procedures on low-income black mothers who were giving birth to their second child. Do y'all hear that, family? Okay. The mothers were told that they would have to agree to have their tubes tied or their welfare benefits would be canceled. Y'all look that history up. They didn't tell y'all that, right? See, that's an attack. That's a direct attack on the melanated family, where they forced women who were on AFDC. We could, oh my goodness, we could talk about the origins of AFDC, the New Deal. We can talk about that. But they forced women, black women, who are on AFDC, if you don't get your tubes tied, we're going to attack the melanated family by saying you cannot have your benefits for your child after your second birth if you don't get your tubes tied. You can't get this money. You can't get this milk. You can't get this food. You can't get any support if you don't get your tubes. Now, remember, it was in more states than North and South Carolina, but these are the two that it was prominent. They had to agree. Melanated, so-called black Hebrew mothers had to agree that if they didn't get their tubes tied, their welfare benefits would be canceled. You see that, y'all? Look it up. Eugenics. I'm telling you. Eugenics. Look up eugenics. EUGENICS. It's very, yeah, FDR, New Deal. Exactly. Exactly. Sister Benz. See, this is the attack. Now I'm going to get to David's cry in verse number 3, where he says, "There is no soundness in my flesh because of thine anger." I'm gonna deal with this soundness in my flesh because the soundness in my flesh, there's another way that we've been sterilized, or we're trying to be sterilized as well. I'm gonna get to that. I'm gonna come back to sterilization and deal with the text. But let me go through another aspect, because this was a Holocaust as well. Think of how many black women were forced to get their tubes tied, and how many black, so-called black babies, Hebrew babies, were not born as a result. But then we got birth control. Huh? How is that a Holocaust, Pastor? Well, let me explain this. In 1905, Teddy Roosevelt said this. Remember, Teddy Roosevelt was the president. Teddy Roosevelt said this about birth control pills. He said that it was race suicide for white Americans if educated white women continued to have fewer children. Certain African American leaders also taught that political power came with greater population. Okay, did you hear what Teddy Roosevelt said? It was race suicide for white Americans if educated white women continued to have fewer children. What does that mean? That if you keep using birth control, that means that it is going to be a holocaust for your race. Roosevelt said that about white women. He said, no. We don't want white women on birth control. Who do you think they wanted on birth control? Us. This is why in 1934, Marcus Garvey, if you don't know who Marcus Garvey is, and the UNIA, the United Negro Improvement Association, resolved or came to the conclusion that birth control constituted a Black holocaust. You see that, guys? And many families, so-called Black families, were quick to give their daughters the pill instead of giving them the scriptures and then providing an example of how to live holy and chaste before Almighty Yah. You see that? See, here's the problem. You got modern day preachers, so-called pastors today, that they won't speak out against this stuff. They have power and influence, but they won't speak out against this. They won't speak out against birth control. They won't speak out against the horrible schools, police brutality, economic oppression. They won't speak out on none of these things. The miseducation of our people, mass incarceration. They don't speak out against none of this stuff. Birth control, holocaust. They're not speaking out against this. Let me go to another one. Abortion. Now, let me take you back a little bit. Women that were enslaved brought with them from the continent the knowledge of traditional folk birth control practices and of abortion obtained through the use of herbs, blunt trauma, and other methods of killing the fetus. Now, fetus is simply a Latin word that means baby, or producing strong uterine cramps. Women that were enslaved were often expected to breed more enslaved children to enrich their owners, but some quietly rebelled. Okay, in 1856, a white doctor reported that a number of slave owners were upset that their enslaved people appeared to hold a secret by which they destroy the fetus at an early age of gestation. Why did these so-called Black women, Hebrew women, do that? Because they didn't want to bring their babies into slavery. Check this out. After slavery ended, Black women formed social groups and clubs in the 1890s to uplift their Hebrew culture and race. The revolutionary idea that Black women might enjoy a full life without ever being a mother was presented. You hear that? Listen to the history of abortion. That Black women could enjoy, watch this, that Black women might enjoy a full life without ever being a mother. That Black women, I'm going to say it again, would enjoy a full life without ever being fruitful and multiplying. That's completely against the scriptures. That was a direct attack on the Black family. However, these were Black women saying this. They formed groups and clubs in the 1890s to uplift the race by saying that Black women could enjoy a full life without ever becoming a mother. This is the history of abortion. You see this? I can get into all of this, but So again, we're talking about being fruitless and divided. But let me get into this next one. Because not only was it sterilization, birth control, abortion, but let me go back to sterilization. Do you know that there are foods that will sterilize you? Yeah. Foods that contain high amounts of estrogen. Foods that contain high amounts of estrogen. I'm not talking about, so there's estrogen in the male and female body. Naturally, we produce estrogen and also testosterone, women and men, but it's balanced. I'm talking about xenoestrogen or synthetic estrogen. Come on, go with me, y'all. There are doctors, there are scientists in labs producing xeno or synthetic estrogen, and they're putting it in our foods, they're putting it in our drinks, and this estrogen is designed to make not only men but women sterile. See, you know who's the big culprit? Yes, you guessed it, the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture. The United States Department of Agriculture is a federal government agency, excuse me, that oversees farming, ranching, forestry. The USDA also regulates food quality and safety, not only the quality of it, but the safety of it, nutrition labeling. Look up food labeling laws. You need to look up. I'm telling y'all, man. Look up. You need to find this out. Look up food labeling laws. Food labeling. Please look this stuff up, y'all, because I don't want you. Well, I do want you to think I'm lying, so you can go research this stuff for yourself. And rural economic development. The conclusion of the matter is that there has been, and there still is an all-out, watch this, in our face attack on the melanated families in the U.S. and around the world. And I'm going to show you tonight, or continue to show you. So as we look at the book of Psalm, as we went through it, we can clearly see how scripture addresses the issue we're dealing with tonight, the attack on the melanated family through foods and what we ingest. The idea here is not, especially in the book of Hebrews. The book of Hebrews tells us that we need to lay aside every weight. Eating foods that have been deemed healthy by the USDA, but turn out to be unhealthy, is a weight, y'all. It's not a sin, it's a weight. It's a weight, it's a burden that David, the psalmist, talked about. It's too heavy for him to bear. It's too heavy for you to bear. And that's why he says, lay it aside. And so he says that we're to lay it aside because we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witness. And so watch this. The idea here is not that this great cloud of witnesses are watching us run our race as we're laden down with these heavy weights and burdens. No, the idea is that they are our examples for us to look at on how to lay down a weight. So watch this. But what happens when our examples, they don't have the wisdom, but they steady talking? When our elders are not talking to us with wisdom. We need to hear wisdom from our elders so that we can learn how to fight against the attacks on the melanated family so we can continue to run the race that Yah wants us to run in this pit that we call earth. So we got to figure out, how do we continue to run this race when the examples are few and far in between? Well, remember I said the USDA, their role, this government agency, their role in our society is one of their roles is to regulate food quality, safety, and how nutritious it is. All right. Now let's get into this a little bit deeper. Let's take a deep dive. And estrogen, you guys, I want to deal with estrogen, this synthetic estrogen, because it's prominent and it's not really looked at. You don't hear lessons and sermons and teachings on the effects of xeno or synthetic estrogen and its effect on the human body and how it is sterilizing melanated people so that we're not being fruitful and multiplying, but we're fruitless and we're divided because we don't even see the attack. We're blinded. So I want to deal tonight with how the xeno or synthetic estrogen that they're putting in our foods, how is that an attack on the melanated family, which is causing us to be fruitless and divided? So the first thing I want to look at is xenoestrogen. Please write this down. Xenoestrogen has an effect on two serious body organs. You ready? I'm going to put them in here. It has an effect on these two serious bodily organs. And when I put them here, oh yes. Okay, you ready for this? Okay, here we go. So the two are right here. Your pituitary gland and your hypothalamus gland. The xenoestrogen or synthetic or fake estrogen that's being put in our foods and beverages negatively affect the pituitary and the hypothalamus gland. Very important, y'all. Let's start with the pituitary gland, because these organs, well, I shouldn't say, well, they could be considered organ, but this gland, let me share my screen here because I want to show you where the pituitary is. Some of you already know. It's right here. You see the pituitary? Let me make this picture larger because I want y'all to see this. See, this is why the foods we eat, you got to be careful because it affects your brain. Okay? It affects the functionality of your brain. You see right here? This little bitty gland right behind the eyes, right? If you go to the bridge of the nose, it's right behind the bridge of the nose, right toward the top of your bridge. If you go right to the top of your bridge of your nose and you follow that all the way to the back of your head, or not all the way to the back, but it's kind of like in the middle. It's right here, the pituitary gland. You see that? Hmm. That's what's being affected. Xeno or synthetic estrogen, fake estrogen, that is being stuffed in our foods could cause brain damage, pituitary gland damage. Now, pituitary gland is referred to as the master gland. Why? Because it monitors and it regulates three major areas of bodily functions. When the hypothalamus, watch this, we're going to get into the hypothalamus. We're going to get into the hypothalamus and we're going to show you where this is crazy, guys. When I put this together and show you where the hypothalamus is, show you this. Let's see. I'm going to show you something. Let's see if they got this. Oh, yes. I knew they had it. So you saw that picture. I'm going to show you. As a matter of fact, I think this one is better. Yeah, I'm going to show you guys this one because it has all of the different. Oh, yes. This is a good one. So bear with me. Bear with me, y'all. Insert. Image. Upload. Oh, boy. Let me show you this, y'all. Okay, so here's your thyroid. It's in your neck. It's like a butterfly type of shaped organ. The pituitary is this little green one in the bottom here. Watch this. The hypothalamus is right above it. So if you look in this picture, the pituitary is connected to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus and the pituitary in the brain control the normal secretion of thyroid hormones, which we're going to look at, which in turn control metabolism. It does more than that, but that's one of the main functions. You see that? So watch this. If foods that contain synthetic or fake estrogen affects the pituitary, hypothalamus, and your thyroid, that constitutes an attack. Now let's bring it home. Let's show you how. So three major areas. So the pituitary gland, this little one right here, even though it's small, it's very important. It's the master gland. It's considered the master gland because it monitors and it regulates three major areas of bodily functions. When the hypothalamus sends messages to it to release vasopressin. Okay, that's one hormone. And vasopressin acts on the kidney to conserve water, and it's important in fluid and electrolyte balance. Oxytocin stimulates in the contraction of the smooth muscle tissue of the uterus. This is for women, which is important during childbirth. Oxytocin also contracts the smooth muscle of the breast for milk production. So if you have a breast milk issue, you can't produce breast milk for whatever reason, women. Could be that you have a pituitary gland issue, which could come from an overbalance, an out of balance amount of estrogen, or too much xeno or synthetic estrogens being consumed with foods, which is a form of sterilization. Hypothalamus is the messenger center that communicates with the pituitary system to deliver nutrients to the cells and release hormones. So if your hypothalamus is not able to function and send those messages to the pituitary system to release the nutrients and the hormones that is needed in reproduction, come on and go, how can you be fruitful and multiply? Come on, family. Let's talk about this. So let's deal with the reproduction system. So the pituitary gland communicates with these systems, or is in charge of your reproduction system. Okay? Growth and sexual reproduction development and function. So what are we talking about here? Growth and reproduction development. So what are your reproductive organs? Penis and vagina. So let's break this down. Let's look at the penis. I want you to look at penile atrophy. Okay. Now I'm going to show you this because many of us estrogen and penile atrophy. I'm going to do this in real time because I want y'all to see this. Estrogen and estrogen mimicking chemicals. Remember I said there's this xenoestrogen or synthetic estrogen? Well, in our foods, so our bodies produce natural estrogen in balance with testosterone. Women have more estrogen in balance to give them their feminine, curvy hips, visceral, which is visceral fat. Natural estrogen is a cellular proliferator. It causes the growth of cells in certain areas. Okay. So there's natural estrogen and this mimicking synthetic estrogen can affect penis growth. Are y'all with me? It's right there. If you cannot, well, it affects penis growth. Okay. 2 inches per year. Also, high estrogen levels can independently increase the risk of erectile dysfunction. So with the penis, now we looked up penile atrophy and estrogen. Look at all these: low libido, moodiness, loss of lean muscle mass, depression, belly fat, poor erection quality, tiredness. Look at that. Fewer erections, decreased ejaculations, shrinking of the penis and testicles. Y'all really want me to go here? We are to be fruitful and multiply, but we can't because there's an all-out attack on the melanated family through synthetic estrogen in our foods. Now, let me show you why am I going here? Why am I talking about the penis and the reproductive organs? Why am I talking about that? Well, because if we get into Psalm 38 and verse 3, soundness in my flesh. Soundness means to be incomplete, unfinished, to be at an end, to be impaired. Okay, impaired is a good word. Flesh, what is he talking about here? Well, this word flesh, okay, they Biv Sare or Sari. Biv Sari is used in Genesis 2:20 and 23. Adam gave names to all the cattle. But it says here, and Adam said, this is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman. Genesis 1:28, where he says, watch this. So watch this. If Eve is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh, what should they be doing? Well, after he created them, he said, and God blessed them, and he said to them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. But how could they be fruitful and multiply if the foods that they were eating were causing them to be to have erectile dysfunction? Come on and go with me here. That Adam couldn't get any ejaculation going on. That he had poor erection quality. He couldn't be fruitful and multiply. He would be fruitless and divided. Synthetic estrogen causes an attack. Actually, it causes a sterilization of melanated men and women. Y'all see that? Oh, man. Okay. So what are the foods then? What foods have fake estrogen in it? Okay. All your soy products. Okay. Soy foods, soybeans, tofu, miso, all of this stuff. Okay. So what are the ones that we should avoid? Wheat and grains because they have estrogen in them, fake estrogen. Food additives and preservatives. So any foods that have, watch this, bottled water. See, y'all think I'm playing. Do I need to give you a source? You want a source? Okay. I'll give you a source. This is Medical News Today. What are phytoestrogens? Benefits in foods. Phytoestrogens are a natural compound. Remember I talked to you about we produce natural, it's called phytoestrogen. Okay? Compound found in plants and plant-based foods, which are healthy for us. When eaten, they may affect a person in some way as estrogen produced by the body. Okay? But let me go into give me 1 second. Because I want to look at a different. Hold on. You see this, family? Some food additives mimic human hormones. This is the fake estrogen. New research reveals that some common food additives behave like estrogen in the body. Now, I want to show you how these fake chemicals of the estimated, here, let me highlight it. Of the estimated 3,000 additives used in the United States to preserve foods or improve their taste and appearance, only about 2,000 have detailed toxicological information available, according to the FDA, Federal Food and Drug Administration. So only 2,000 have detailed toxicological information. The other 1,000, you don't know what you're getting and how it will affect you. I just want to show you this stuff, guys. Because I want to show you how commercially raised meat and dairy, cosmetics, food preservatives, pesticides, paints, brake fluid, nonstick cookware, drinking water, nail polish, cleaning supplies, plastic tampons, toilet paper, soap, perfumes, baby bottles, food containers. The list of products containing life-altering chemicals could fill a book. We are drowning in a world consumed with chemicals. The latest research is enough to scare us even more. The xenoestrogens, remember we talked about what xenoestrogens are? They're fake estrogens, are a subcategory of endocrine disruptors. It disrupts your endocrine system that have estrogen-like effects. But to understand this, you must understand the purpose of estrogen within our bodies. Okay? We don't want to go through all of that. Look at this. There are over 160 types of xenoestrogens currently known, with an unknown amount still to be uncovered. These toxic elements are linked to the following: brain development. We talked about the hypothalamus and we talked about the pituitary gland. Behavior, blood abnormalities, female infertility and male infertility, attack on the Black family, our melanated family, testicle shrinkage, penile atrophy, lower sperm counts, asthma, allergies, low birth rate, weight, kidney disease, thyroid disease, high cholesterol, skin cancer, bladder cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, prostate, pancreas, brain cancer, testicular cancer, obesity, endometriosis, early onset of puberty, miscarriages, diabetes. The list goes on about these xenoestrogens. Look at this little map. Xenoestrogens, either they're natural estrogen, or synthetic or fake. Pharmaceuticals, food preservatives, UV filters, coolants, okay, pesticides and environmental contaminants, personal care products. That's why you got to get natural things. Wash your body with natural things. We're not just talking about detoxing or being healthy with your eating. We're talking about your entire way of life is going to have to change, family. When there's an attack, and what I'm revealing to you right now is the attack. Now, if you're a soldier in Yah's army, you got to weapon up. You got to get trained. So look at the WHO, the World Health Organization, states that endocrine disruptors are associated with altered reproductive function in males and females, increased incidence of breast cancer, abnormal growth pattern, and neural development. That means mental brain development, delays in children, as well as changes in immune function. This should be a wake-up call. It is not just a simple study that has been buried and is easily overlooked. The WHO, or the World Health Organization, which is a part of the oh goodness, having a brain, it'll come to me. The WHO continues to describe how human exposure to this EDCs, I think it's something estrogen, occurs through everything from ingesting foods, drinking tap water or bottled water, inhaling dust particles and gases through the skin. They can be transferred during pregnancy to here is the Latin word fetus, through the placenta, and are also passed while breastfeeding. Oh yeah, the WHO is a part of the United Nations. There we go. So the big question is, what are the foods that contain this fake estrogen? Okay. Well, what are these foods? We're going to get to that, but I want to show you this first. So we already read where estrogen can attack the pituitary and the hypothalamus. Okay. Now let me show you how important these are. We just talked about the reproductive system, synthetic estrogen's effect on penile atrophy and the causes. But you know what else? Also, your glandular systems, right? So we looked at the reproductive. What about the glandular systems? So we're going to look at the thyroid first, because remember, this picture shows that this connection between the hypothalamus in the brain, the pituitary gland in the brain. So look at this. The hypothalamus and the pituitary in the brain control normal secretion of the thyroid hormones. So now we're going to look at what happens when your thyroid is out of whack. Because this is the problem. The thyroid is not receiving enough nutrients, okay, so that it can release the proper hormones and give our bodies the balance that it needs. So let's look at the thyroid. So there is a thyroid stimulating hormones that should be released. The pituitary gland and the hypothalamus gland communicate with each other. They tell the thyroid, okay, release this particular hormone. If it doesn't, if that communication is broken down in any way, watch what happens. You get what is called goiter. Have you heard of that, guys? Goiter? Goiter happens when your thyroid gland grows larger than it should be. One cause is associated with abnormal thyroid hormone levels, because the pituitary and the hypothalamus is not communicating effectively with the thyroid because it's not receiving enough nutrients through the proper foods, the thyroid stimulating hormones are not being able to produce at levels that create healthy metabolism, body temperature, mood, excitability, pulse and heart rate, and digestion. So that's the thyroid. That's the thyroid family, which is super important. Now, I'm not going to get into the organ systems yet because we're going to deal with the gonads and the kidneys. I just wanted to deal with the reproduction and the glandular system to show you that this synthetic estrogen, oh, oh my goodness. Let me show you the foods, guys. Let me show you these foods. Remember, they have preservatives. And so any food, y'all, that is bagged, packaged, if you're buying that stuff and you're consuming it on a daily basis, believe me, it comes with fake estrogen because they have to preserve it. They put it and I don't want to even say they sneak it because it's clearly out in the open. Clearly, they're not even hiding it. It's also in products that many people use every day. Now watch this. Let me show you the foods. Y'all want to see this? Look at all this stuff. All of this. Yeah, all of this stuff. Chips, popcorn, all of that. Look at this, guys. All of this stuff. Fake estrogen, which causes a breakdown in your reproductive system, which is a direct attack on the so-called black family, melanated family, Hebrew people. Your thyroid gland will not produce the hormones that it should. Do you see this? Is it worth it? Which could cause you to have goiter, which means that your hormone levels are off because the pituitary is not functioning properly with the hypothalamus, which is they're supposed to send messages to the thyroid, but they're not all. Is it worth it? Is it? Well, junk food is cheaper, but the cost is not. The cost, family, is the cost cheaper? I don't think so. You see that? All of this wavy lays, Dorito, additives and preservatives that have xenoestrogen, fake estrogen in it, even in the drinks. Look at this, family. It's right here. All this stuff that I love, that I ate for years. I ate it for years, y'all. For years. All of this is affecting our glandular and our reproductive systems. And this attack, I used to love golden Oreos. Not anymore, because the price is too much. The cost is too much. And when I know somebody's attacking me, I don't like that. Look, yeah, preservatives. You want to know why I love bread, y'all? Too many preservatives, though. All of these saturated and trans fat preservatives. I can't do it. I love bread. I love bread, but they have to package it. That means they have to put preservatives in it. Oh my God, look at all my favorite breads. I can't do it. Oh my goodness. What are we doing? What are we doing, fam? What more do I have to do? What more? Look at this. Look at this stuff over here. I don't, oh my God. Guys, I can go on and show you all the foods that have preservatives. All of them. Taste the real goodness? Seriously? McDonald's for real? Look at all this. All of this stuff. Most of this stuff you can make on your own naturally, but we don't want to do that. Any packaged food, they can tell you right here. Consumers have come to expect that the food they choose from the supermarket shelves will stay fresher for longer. But as the market becomes more aware of the role of nutrition in health and well being, there is concern about the potential risk posed by preservatives and other additives. Well, I just showed you the risks that are involved. Reproductive risk, thyroid, glandular system risk, your thyroid. This mood and excitability, y'all, you know, one of the main functions of dopamine is to deal with your mood and your excitability. And what these foods do with the additives and preservatives, they have what is called Kind of showed you guys, which are addictive chemicals in additives and preservatives. Okay. And do you know where dopamine is located? Dopamine is produced in the gut, y'all. Do you have good or bad gut health? That's the question. If you're eating foods that have preservatives, I shouldn't say preservatives, but additives and preservatives, or phony and fake estrogen, which they add to the preservatives, then your gut health is not good. And as a result of not having good gut health, then dopamine, watch this, is kicked on when you're eating foods that are highly addictive. The reason why they're highly addictive is because they have endocannabinoids in them. Look up endocannabinoids and see what that is. I mean, you could tell what it is. I think Endo Ice Cube had a song with Endo in it. So you know what that is. So what are we doing, y'all? What are we doing, family? With this information, well, what you gonna do now? We're behind enemy lines. We're behind enemy lines. We're getting attacked. And you got somebody in our camp waving a white flag saying, here we are. This is what we doing. What would you do? Are we in this thing together or not? Whose side are you on, really? Next week, I'm going to deal with these other two systems, y'all. I dealt with the reproductive and I dealt with the glandular systems. And we said that fake estrogen or xenoestrogen, synthetic estrogen, because you're right, because parasites. So we're going to talk about who's really eating the junk food in our bodies. Because you know why we're hungry? It's a couple of things. The reason why we keep eating junk food is because the parasites are really the ones that's consuming whatever nutrients is in the junk food. There's really no nutrients, but whatever that parasite can get out of it, they snatching it from you. So we talked about the hypothalamus. Remember I showed you guys this? Estrogen, especially synthetic estrogen, I'm going to say it again. It shuts down, it blocks the communication between the hypothalamus, pituitary, and the thyroid. We got to get watch this. We got to get the hypothalamus and the pituitary up and running. Oh, cousin, absolutely a demon possession, because we talked about how dopamine affects your mood and also Oh, where was it at? Absolutely, it does. Cause oh yeah. So the thyroid, if you have low levels of um, hormones that should be so the pituitary and the hypothalamus communicates to the thyroid to produce certain hormones. If that hormone level is not at its normal or regulatory level, what's what will what will result is what is called goiter. Goiter happens when the thyroid gland grows larger. One cause is associated with abnormal thyroid hormone levels. So if the hormone levels are not leveled, then it can affect mood and excitability. It affects your mood, angry, upset, uncontrollable, not happy, not joyful. Pulse and heart rate, digestion. This is why, you know what pulse and heart rate also affects, guys? Come on, y'all talk to me. What can an abnormal pulse and heart rate cause? What if you have an abnormal pulse and heart rate? Hmm? It's called tachycardia. You ever heard of tachycardia? Abnormal heart rhythm? Do you know what tachycardia does? Search it up. Heart rate, tachycardia is a heart rate that's faster than normal or more than 100 beats per minute when you're resting. Heart attack and stroke, cuz exactly. So what they'll tell you at the doctor is that we could either give you this is what they wanted to do to me, y'all. They wanted to give me medication or do an oblation. I mean, not an oblation, but an ablation, which is a surgery. When all we got to do is stop eating. They didn't even ask me about my diet, y'all. They ain't even concerned. They're not even trained to do that. What all you got to stop doing is consuming foods that have fake and synthetic estrogen in it. That's all you got to do. So, family, we're going to continue this on next Shabbat, but we're going to continue with the attack on the melanated family. Continue because I didn't even get a chance to get to all the different. We have the organ system, how it affects the kidneys, the uterus, the breast, and the gonads. I didn't even get a chance to get to that. Oh, look at this. Foods high, I should say fake or synthetic. Any foods that have saturated fats, refined carbohydrates, sugary foods. That means, now when I say sugary, what I mean is processed sugary foods. I have it right here, processed sugars. We're going to get into this. We're going to start right here next week. And then we're going to work our way back to, I'll fix it up. But look at this. I'm just going to give you a little hint right here. Foods with saturated fats, refined carbohydrates. Okay, y'all? We got to get our stuff together, man. It's an all-out attack on the melanated family. We're fruitless and divided instead of being fruitful and multiply. They're purposely sterilizing us. Not with the threat like they did women with the AFDC check. They said, if you don't get your tubes tied, we're going to take your check. That was a form of a holocaust against the melanated family, and it's still happening today. Now they're saying, we don't care if you tie your tubes or not. We're going to let you eat yourself into sterilization. Blessings and shalom. Blessings, family. Shalom.